So we will get in time. Madalena will normally we will need some seconds after she will give the sign that we shall start. We will have some 5 seconds before coming in. I will be the first, so I have to be the one who pays attention to it. Otherwise, everything is fine. Regarding the views, everything is fine. I mean, perhaps if you could put the camera in such a way that
I think we are already
blinds.
We are live, Paulo.
Yeah, we are not still.
We are live.
Yes. Sorry, Siegfried. So, Dr. Banerjee, if you could just put your camera in a way that the blinds will not appear. Oh, fantastic! That's much better like that. Very good. So we should be recording only at 1, starting at 1, and then Milena will please give us a sign when you will start recording and when we can start. Yeah, your light is perfect. Yeah, mine is not so good. Okay, Madalena, tell us when we can start. Yeah, Madalena, she's not hearing, apparently. Madalena? So it's appeared. Just a minute. Cinco dias quando estivermos disponíveis. Eu não te ouço. Okay, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone. It is our pleasure to have among us today Dr. Suparna Banerjee. She just made her PhD, and the book that is being published on her PhD is exactly the reason why of our discussion. Her PhD in political science was granted by the University of Bonn in Germany, titled "The Good Legitimacy, the Bad Legitimacy," and her book is called "The Maoist and Government Welfare: Excluding Legitimacy or Legitimizing Exclusion." It has been published by Routledge. She has completed her bachelor's and master's in sociology from Presidency College, Calcutta, and University of Calcutta, India, respectively. She was a senior research fellow at the International Strategic and Security Studies Program, Bangalore, when she worked on the Myanmar ethnic conflicts. Her area of expertise includes conflict studies, Adivasi rights, state, and legitimacy. Well, her book is going to be the main issue being debated. We will start by a presentation from the author. She will use a PowerPoint that will be passed during the session, and we will have then a debate that will be conducted by Dr. Siegfried Wolf. he will be asking questions, and after the debate, if there is time and interest, people are very much welcome to raise questions through the social media. So please, the floor is yours, Dr. Suparna Banerjee.
Such a warm. I'm now sharing my screen.
Exactly.
Is it visible and am I properly audible?
I think so, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So this is the book, and this is going to be the topic of my presentation today: Maoist and Government Welfare, Excluding Legitimacy or Legitimizing Exclusion. So I'll start with a brief introduction about the conflict. Communist Party of India, it was already in existence. However, Communist Party of India Marxist broke away from its original parent party uh, on the ground that they are not revolutionary enough and they were compromising with the Indian state. However, there were certain leaders within the Marxist faction as well who were not very happy with how the party was functioning, because at that point in time, in the state of West Bengal, Communist Party of India Marxist was already forming a government. Which these certain elements said that they were compromising with the ideals of revolution, while this was the right time to actually revolt against the current Indian state. So it was these factions within the Marxist Party who decided to revolt, and it all started from a small village called Naxalbari, which is situated in the state of West Bengal. It happened in the year 1967. It was led by a person called Charu Majumdar. 1960s was already across the globe, the decade of student revolution, revolutionary ideals, rebellion, which was going on across various parts of the world. So they formed this particular political party called AICCR, All India Coordination Committee of Communist Revolutionaries. In 1969, they formed a full-fledged political party called CPIML, which is Communist Party of India Marxist-Leninist. As the name suggests, that they were inspired by the ideals of Marxism and Leninism. However, the leader, Mr. Charu Majumdar, died in the year 1972. And over the year, the original political party of CPIML broke into a number of factions. In 2004, all these political parties, led by a bigger party from the northern part of India and another bigger party from the southern part of India, they decided to unite and they formed the CPI Maoist, which is currently a banned organization under UAPA, which is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. The entire conflict started with the land movement, with the indigenous people, the Adivasis, the peasants, the landless people. They were organized, and the land movement started in the 1960s. However, over the period, in the current conflict scenario, if we see and if it is analyzed, we will see that the resource conflict has taken the majority portion of the causes behind this conflict. The central part of India, where the current conflict is particularly based, is a resource rich area for government of India, many of which is exploited for various development purposes. And that has become a breeding ground for the conflict scenario between the Maoist and the Indian state. Moving to the main part of my book, there are 5 key elements which I have tried to do differently from what has already been done by my predecessors, because as you see that the conflict has started in the 1960s, and we are talking about in 2023, more than 55 years have passed. As a result, there are many people, many movies, many literature, art have been created surrounding this entire conflict, because there is this entire notion of romanticism associated with this supreme sacrifice of death that these people undergo for the cause that they have been fighting. So first, I'll start with this topic of positionality. Now, in Indian system, I'll talk about caste system a little bit in detail in my subsequent slides. But as an introduction, I belong to an upper caste and upper class. I am a member of upper caste and upper class. And how do you identify that? With my surname. It is very unfortunate. It is a very derogatory system. However, this system is still very much in existence in Indian society, in Indian system. So it is actually, the fight is against people like me. So when I went to the field to collect data, it came as a while I knew about how this would be taken by the Maoist and by all the respondents with whom I was going to have a discussion. However, it somehow dawned on me that I actually represented the very state against whom the Maoists are fighting. So it was very important for me to talk about this positionality of mine in detail in the book. So there is a whole chapter which is dedicated where I discuss that about my biases, about my certain taken for granted considerations that with which I went to the field. However, and that is why I used to maintain a journal where I differentiated between what I went to the field with ideas and what I came back. So it was easier for me to compare and include that in my data. And I think this would be a useful tip for the future researchers as well, that it is all right to belong to a certain group, to have a certain identity, but it would be wrong not to discuss that out in the open, especially as a researcher where we have this entire responsibility of being subjective and being ethical in what we do, because these hidden biases might have an impact in how we are thinking, how we are analyzing our data, and that might have an impact on the results and the conclusion that we are drawing from our research. So it is very important to discuss about our identity in the research and be as objective as possible, because these are topics, especially in social sciences, which are very subjective, and their perceptions might vary from person to person. Second is ideology. This is an ideology-based political movement which has been going on in India for the last 55 years. However, the way the ideology has been legitimized in the Indian society by the Maoists is very unique. For them, ideology is not just some wise words from a philosopher of a distant land. They say that the ideology is born out of the objective conditions of the people who are staying in the land. Say, for example, an indigenous person who is living in the interiormost forest of the country. For them, state represents the forest guard who has been exploiting him. State represents all the members of the paramilitary forces who has taken him illegally, or whose victim illegal killing he has been, or whose wife or sister has been raped, or who is a regular victim of the conflict that has been going on in the interiormost forest, about whose news we hardly receive. As we are talking, just 2 days ago, there has been a blast in the state of Chhattisgarh where 10 police personnel has been killed. So ideology is born out of these objective conditions. The ordinary indigenous person who is living in these forests and who are part of this movement, they may not know the ideals of Marxism, Leninism, or Maoism, but they know that the person who represents the state is not my friend. So ideology is this is how ideology has been defined by them. Because the reason to discuss about this ideology in this way is the often quoted allegations by the Indian state against the Maoist leadership is that the Adivasis or the indigenous people are innocent, naive people. They do not know anything about philosophy and about Maoism, about Marxism, and that they are only victims of brainwashing, which the Maoist leadership have been doing. However, I was talking to during my fieldwork, I was talking to a director of another think tank based in New Delhi, and he told me that if you go to a local police station and if you ask the lowest in the police rank, a constable, whether he knows about the Indian Constitution and whether he has learned every code and every article in the Constitution, I'm sure he will be saying that no. So if we are okay with the constable not knowing a constitution, constitution, then there should not be any allegations and there should not be any opposition against an ordinary Adivasi not knowing the philosophy of Maoism and Leninism. They may not be same, but it is all right to look at a problem in this way also. Third is the legitimacy. It is absolutely for sure that there is an absence of state legitimacy in the areas where the conflict has been going on for so many decades. State has not been able to reach out to the people, so-called the hearts and minds of the people, the ordinary Adivasis, the indigenous people, the peasants, the landless, the lower caste, who have been the victims of systemic injustice over decades. However, absence of state legitimacy does not necessarily entail Maoist legitimacy. Maoists have specific strategy and tactics in place with which how they establish their bases in these forest areas. You ask a civil servant who is posted over there, he is just doing his job. He doesn't even know the local language, the local Adivasi language which they speak. They do not even dress like the Adivasis. They do not eat like the Adivasis. Whereas if you talk to a Maoist leader, he will go into the forest, he or she will go into the forest, dress like them, talk to them in their language, eat food like them, and the kind of food that they eat. So Maoists are not doing something extraordinarily great. Rather, they are just trying to be part and parcel of the life that these Adivasis have been, or the indigenous people have been following. And this is how they gain their trust. This is how they establish their legitimacy, and this is how they have been creating their basis for strategic purposes. State, for example, on the other hand, might organize a football match in order to woo away the young minds so that they do not join the Maoists, or they do not join hands with the Maoists, or do not participate in these kind of extreme violence. It is absolutely all right, but these are just one-time affair. These are just one-time event. It is failing to bridge the gap and listen to the complaints in a way the Adivasis and the indigenous people have been trying to convey, which the Maoists have been able to do in a very successful way for the last 50 years. Fourth is agency. Once again, as I said in my previous slide, that there is this tendency by the state and the state apparatus that the Adivasis and the indigenous people are absolutely naive. They are innocent. They are simple living. They do not know anything. Now, this is the age-old civilization debate that we have been following, and as academicians, we always try to engage into that. We somehow consider ourselves to be higher up in the civilization ladder, while these people, there is still time where they need time to be civilized, where there is still scope for them to be civilized. As a result, what happens is the state is failing to understand the way the Adivasis have been thinking, or the indigenous people have been thinking. I'll give you two examples to make it easier. Now, there is a Government of India's policy of surrender and rehabilitation, where if you surrender with arms, without arms, there is particular sort of rehabilitation which the Indian state provides the Maoist. This is considered to be spontaneous. There is no problem when a Maoist is coming and surrendering before the Indian state. Second example is there are many extra constitutional groups. Since the 1970s, late 1970s, early 1980s, there have been many extra constitutional groups called the Ranveer Sena, Salwa Jurum in Gondi language means the purification hunt. These are indirectly supported by the paramilitary forces, the government, the local government, the grassroots organizations sponsored by the government to fight the Maoist. And these are also considered to be spontaneous. So government has no problem when some entities come up which suits their agenda. Problem arises when the Adivasis or the indigenous people are trying to participate in a Maoist movement. That is not considered spontaneous. So Uprising is not considered spontaneous, while participation in Salva Jurum or participation as surrendering and rehabilitation program is considered spontaneous. So there is I don't want to use the term hypocrisy, that might sound a bit harsh, but there is different ways of looking into how, as long as it suits the state's agenda. And I think there is a gap in this. There is a hole in how this entire problem is being looked at. Last, and I have kept the most important one for the last. All those of us who have been working on India, we are aware of this Indian caste system, which is the fourfold Varna system, where there are four divisions: Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Brahmins who are considered to be the wise, the educated ones; Kshatriyas who are the warrior; Vaishyas who are considered to be the business class; and Shudras who are the untouchables and who are engaged in these menial jobs. And there are laws in India which absolutely bans discrimination on the basis of caste system. There is no law which uproots the caste system. Caste system is there. It is very much relevant, but there are laws which bans any kind of discrimination based on the caste system. Till here it is fine, but let us take the discussion to one step further. There is this mentality of looking at things from an upper and lower position, and that is there in all of us. And this is something which is beyond any legalities. These are unconscious biases which always work within ourselves. Say, for example, the housemaid who comes to my house to clean the dishes or to wash my clothes, probably he or she will not be provided food on the same table that I eat. In some houses, there are separate stairs which they are supposed to use. So these are certain unconscious biases, and this mentality is there, but there is no law which can restrict such behavior. As a result, what happens? People who are at the receiving end of such mentality, for them, it is a case of everyday humiliation. One day they might accept it, second day they might accept it, third day they might feel frustrated, fourth day there will be anger, and fifth day they might take up arms against people like us. So it is not a one-day affair. We have to look at it from a step by step, how the Adivasis and indigenous people have taken up arms, not within one day. And it is not just about the caste. It is not just about the caste, and I want to emphasize it is a way of looking at things that we are used to. It is ingrained within our culture. Now consider a person who has grown up in such a household. He goes on to occupy a position of authority and he becomes a civil servant who is posted in this area. Now for him or her, he's used to looking at things from a higher pedestal. He considers the Adivasis and the indigenous people to be someone from a lower order. So again, a professor with whom I was talking, and he shared an interesting example experience which happened with him. So he was a professor at a government college, and he was posted in one of these areas which is mostly populated by the indigenous people. So he had a plan, and he went to the local civil servant, saying that I have selected 4-5 brilliant indigenous students who can actually be sent for formal education. The officer snubbed him and said that, no, these people are meant for vocational training. Why to waste time behind formal education? So this is just one example, but that is how policies might also get impacted, and the way policies are formulated might also get impacted by our mentality, by our thought processes. These might look very trivial in our everyday behavior, but this is very important, and this is how the influence happens. This is how the policies are formed, and the result, we see a conflict which has been going on for the last 50 years. A conflict for so many years cannot just take place on the basis of fear or apprehension. The Adivasis might be scared, and they might join hands with the Maoists. They might fear, and they might join hands with the Maoists. But that will happen 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, not for 50 years or 55 years, until and unless they themselves believe in the cause that they are part of. I don't want to sound very pro-Maoist. It is not absolutely about that, because there are state personnel and state representatives who are also getting killed in this everyday violence. As I mentioned, just 2 days ago, there has been a huge blast with 50 kg RDX, where 10 paramilitary forces died. These are all costly and valuable lives that we are losing. And I think it is high time that we take a step back and try to understand the situation and try to understand the problem from different perspective, from different lens. So thank you, and looking forward to some interesting questions and some enriching discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for your introduction to this great question that has a lot of aspects to be considered. I mean, I think it will be difficult to go in depth in the whole of them. But I know that Dr. Siegfried Wolf, he had an advanced copy of your book, and he has been reading it, and he has certainly some comments to do, and we should start then in a discussion by giving the floor to Dr. Wolf and to hear what he has to say about that.
Yes, thank you very much, Paulo, for the introduction and giving me the words. And particular, thank you very much, Dr. Banerjee, for your excellent presentation. As Paulo mentioned already, I had a chance to look at your book in detail, and I was reading it with great interest. So congratulations to that really outstanding book. I was really impressed for several reasons, not only about your really deep knowledge on the subject, and all the data you collected is fantastic, and the interviews you did, literature research, but also what you mentioned in your presentation today, you give a little hint. This was just a tip of the iceberg of your conceptual work you presented today, that you came up with new concepts, offering new concepts to the debate is really a big enrichment, and the way how you applied your studies. From this perspective, your book is really excellent reference work for particularly young researchers. I was personally much impressed by your chapter on your positionality, where I think this was really well written and extremely important. In particular, I have similar experience with you, but as you might know, I did also my PhD in Germany, and I did my work on a very critical, a person who was much under critique and highly politicized. So the question of objectivity and underlying your objectivity was important, and how I positioned myself in my own area of research. So I would love to have this chance to read your chapter earlier when I started my work. So from this point, even from this point of perspective, is really, I can only recommend for young researchers or every researchers in social science to read this particular chapters, even if they have nothing to do with conflict studies. So second point, which I wanted to emphasize here more from the general perspective, why I think your work is outstanding. I think it's really a good groundwork for further studies. Yeah, in particular for people who want to have a more comparative perspective. Yeah? So I think you laid a really good ground for comparative studies in conflict transformation within India. I mean, we have not only the Maoist conflict, there are many more, and so I think you give the researchers some interesting, good tools to deal with other conflicts domestically, but also from the, let's say, international regional perspective. Yeah, as you know, you're from the area, from the region. I think there's no country in South Asia which is just not plagued, suffering from cleavages along all different lines, ethnicity, language, culture, social, economic disparities, just to mention a few. And I think this would be also very interesting. When I was reading your book, it came immediately up the Sri Lanka issue, yeah, the GVP uprising, yeah. I saw so many some similarities in the issue, which would be for your book really an interesting work for people who are working on this issue to compare, you know. Or many other issues in Sri Lanka, like Buddhist, the Sinhalese, Hindu-Tamil conflict, yeah, which would end up in a civil war. So there is your work could be really like a good reference. Or Bangladesh, we have the language movement, which ends up in the independence struggle, which finally leads to the most dramatic genocide in the last century. Pakistan, yeah, there's more or less no area which you don't have any conflict, which would your work quite helpful, from Balochistan to the Pashtun areas, yes, rural Sindh. I guess there would be a lot of opportunities. Also the small, like Nepal, the Terai area, Bhutan, which in particular interesting from your aspect of political exclusion or exclusive politic. Yeah, when you hear when you remember the keyword Traklam Namsa. So there's a lot of opportunity to use your work as reference. So that's just as a some general comments on your work, why I think it's really interesting for other researchers to have a closer look beyond the Maoist framework. Going more into detail of your book, I have basically two sets of comments or questions. Of course, I can't focus on all of your issues, but I want to have two comments. The first one is in the context of what you mentioned as the exclusive nature of Indian politics. This is obviously a significant part of your work. And in your book, you mentioned when it comes to your first assessment of the state responses to this marginalization of communities, it was in 4 words: too little, too late. And so basically, I can agree that that some of the Indian approaches to tackle the issue of marginalization and exclusion did not work out yet perfectly. But I mean, it's obviously in the country, it's a big country like India, it's not so easy on one side to integrate such communities and at the same time preserving their identity. Yeah. I just want to give some examples in this direction. You talked about the language dilemma. Yeah. Of course, I see the point that when, for example, in the local school, you mentioned this example, when they speak English or even the regional language, but not the Adivasi language, yeah, this of course creates barrier for integration. Yeah, and as such, this offer is not as such successful and accepted by the local communities. So at this point, one can see the instrument of language perhaps not successful, the state response, but I have this one thing in mind: this the three-language formula. Yeah. Of course, we can see in the case of the schools, as you mentioned, is not so effective as it should be, or could be, or it was aimed at. But on the other side, when I have a look, I mentioned in my introduction, in my general comments, Bangladesh, yeah, language movement. At least India was able, with some state responses to problems, able at least to maintain the state unity, yeah, which other countries like West and East Pakistan were not able. Yeah. So, and when you see at the conflict, the problems which Nehru facing and then Indira Gandhi were facing, they were still able to keep the thing. And that's, so there is like two sides of the coin. Yeah. So in this direction, I would not completely say that the state policy or state response was in this direction a failure, not perfect, but at least one has to take this also into consideration. And the second point in this direction, you mentioned several times affirmative action or positive discrimination. In particular, you saw it quite critically, the idea of giving quotas and reservations, and so it was not, I think, when I understand it correctly, you did not think it was, you saw it more as an instrument by the politician to get vote banks, and you saw it, I think, a little bit like this, yeah. But at least, when you also emphasize this in the book, at least that it helped a bit to increase the numbers of people from marginalized communities in more higher position in state and society. Yeah? Yeah, of course, you still have things that you, this example in the book, like a sweeper will be always a sweeper from the lower castes, yeah. But at least we have perhaps more professors now than 50 years ago from lower castes, yeah. Of course, the majority might be still from more higher classes, higher castes, but still there. In this, I have one question. In this context, what can be done from your perspective to improve this effectivity of state responses? Yeah, and this would lead me a little bit, would lead me to the second complex of my comments and my second question to you regarding your concept of caste mentality. When I understand it correctly, your concept of caste mentality is basically based on your observation in Bengal, right? And plus some research analysis of leading figures like national figures like Mahatma Gandhi, Ambedkar. So please. Also, that's what I want also to say is that this is not, please see my comments not as a critique, more rather ideas for further research. Yeah,
absolutely.
Ideas to perhaps to how to how you can follow up your work. Perhaps it would be interesting in this direction to look also on other lines of regional thinking or streams of regional thinking. My own PhD brought me in this direction. My part of my work was, for example, to look at social reforms, idea of caste reforms in Maharashtra. Yeah, so you have there a huge debate or some a whole line of very interesting thinkers like Ranade, N.G. Ranade, or Agakar, yeah, even Tilak, yeah, Vici Tilak. And then I don't know about how much you're aware about the Pune controversy.
Yes.
Yeah, the Pune controversy where you have, and I think this is quite interesting. So, the Pune controversy was during the time of independence struggle. The way I think what you should prioritize. Yeah, first social reforms, and then political reforms, and then what is better to achieve independence. Yeah. So in this whole debate, I think is also perhaps to get some ideas for your concept of caste mentality, and this brings me to another phenomenon. I guess you're very much aware about this process of Sanskritization, not in the way of literacy studies, yeah, like a language term, but rather in terms of what is your subject, sociology. So I guess you're very much more aware about this phenomenon than I do. So, and I got this, I thought perhaps not only that it would be helpful, but could we even say this would be a challenge a little bit, this idea of the Sanskritization, this process? Is this not a little bit not contradiction, but a challenge to your concept of caste mentality. So this would be, so these two types of questions I would have. I have a third one only when we have time later, but this is a little bit, more general.
A lot of things. Thank you so much, Siegfried. I think that we have. I think that Dr. Banerjee has a lot to handle right now, and so without any further delay, I would pass immediately the floor to her. Please.
Thank you. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Dr. Wolf, for such lovely and kind words about the work. Before the question, I'll talk a little bit about the exclusionary nature of Indian politics. I mean, what we are seeing today in India currently, this entire debate on rise of right-wing political ideology, and what has been going on by the current political party, what certain laws which have become very controversial, and certain actions that they have been doing have become very controversial. What we are seeing is probably a very machoistic manifestation of the exclusionary nature of Indian politics that has been going on for the last 70 years. I mean, I'm not saying that we have been absolutely blind and immune, that marginalized people exist in our society. We have been there, and we know, and there have been actions, there have been policies. But if you study all the leaders of, say, for example, the better part of the Congress rule, which obviously ruled for most part of Indian independent era, if you see, most of them were belong to the high class, high caste, highly educated, starting from Nehru to obviously Indira Gandhi. And it is not just about dynastic politics we are talking about, because that is there in every Indian political system, no matter one is finger pointing to the other. Irrespective of that, dynasty politics is very much there in every political party of our country. So that is besides the point. But if you look at the leadership, political leadership, you will find mostly people who are belonging to a certain sections of the society, who are the decision makers. There have been people from the marginalized elements, but as if there is a boundary beyond which they cannot rise. And the problem, I feel, lies over there. Somehow, it is people like us who are deciding that, no, I'm allowing you till here, and you cannot go beyond this. Beyond this, it is my arena, and it is my area and my space, my sphere, and I will not allow you to enter beyond this. I will make decisions on your behalf. You will be there, you will only implement it. And I think somewhere this is already in existence. And the language thing that you talked about is absolutely, I mean, it is not possible, because there are thousands of indigenous languages, thousands of local languages are there in India. Because considering the religion, number of religion, caste, class, creed that represents the Indian society. Having said that, if I try to look absolutely from the Maoist perspective, for a Maoist leadership, it really doesn't matter. They just need a scope, a vacuum, where they can ignite and collect these causes and organize people. It is absolutely probably not possible that in every locality you can open a school or you can open a college which will be taught in the local language. It is absolutely not possible. But there should be a system in place. I can give you an example of a particular person, Dr. Martin Kempschen. He is from Germany, and he has been, I'm sure you must have heard his name. He has been living in the Indian village in the state, in my state, in the state of West Bengal, in a Santhal. It's one of the indigenous populated area. And he has opened this system where there is a smooth transition of the indigenous children from their local language to the local vernacular language. But this transition system that he has opened, that could also be a model of which can be replicated in other areas. And this transition is not allowed. Today I'm speaking a language, and tomorrow, the moment I'm going to school, children start teasing me, and I feel out of place. And there, this vacuum is exploited by the Maoist. and this I'm speaking strictly from the Maoist perspective, if I try to understand their mindset and how they are creating these bases and how they are creating their legitimacy among the people. So I think this could be a model, and it is absolutely doable. There is absolutely no problem with that. Obviously, vernacular schools is not possible in every district, in every locality, but this transition, where you allow the indigenous children to have a smooth transition where they can maybe not give up their entire culture, but at least take something along with them and adopt the new culture. This kind of bridge is absent, and it is this vacuum which has been created years after years and decade after decade, that the Maoist has found a place. And it is, as you said, it is not just about Maoism. Today, even if there is an open war between the Indian state and the Maoist, the causes will still be there, and maybe the Maoist will be decimated, absolutely killed, and from tomorrow onwards we will not talk about Maoism. But there will be a conflict transformation. Today it is about Maoism, and tomorrow it might take some other form, because the causes are still there. The dissatisfaction, this complaints of these people are still there, and there I think a system could be in place where all these issues can be handled in a better way. This is the background. But you talked about the possible ways of the policies, how we can reach out to the Maoist. According to Indian government's policy, there can be no peace process or peace dialogue. This is Government of India's official stance, that until and unless you give up violence, until and unless you give up arms, there cannot be any peace dialogue. There have been earlier attempts, but most of them have failed because either Indian state has killed a known political Maoist leader, very famous Maoist leader, a Politburo member, which has stalled the entire process. The killing of Azad, he is very famous. He was very famous. The killing of Azad, who was a member, a high-level Maoist leader. Similarly, the killing of Kishanji in the state of West Bengal. These are very prominent Maoist leaders who have been killed, and there has been a trust deficit. As a result, Government of India's official stance is that until and unless you give up arms, there will be no peace process. Having said that, once again, if you follow Indian electoral system, in every election there has been violence. In every election, in every state, in every central government election, there has been violence. People have been killed. There have been riots. So violence is not something we are new to. It is there. So that means Indian state is okay as long as the violence is within a systematic setup, and they are not okay with the violence when it is done by a group which they have labeled as terrorist or as extremist outfit. So if I am absolutely not okay with violence, then political parties should not also instigate these kind of violence just for the sake of gaining votes. So once these pictures come side by side, or when these pictures are placed side by side, it becomes very easier for the Maoist leadership to gain trust among the people. They go to a village and they go to a forest and they say, the state is against violence. Then what are they doing? Aren't they killing you? Aren't they taking you away illegally? So what is the difference between them and us? So you better come with us. So again, if I'm speaking strictly from the Maoist perspective, so this is one thing. I think this securitization of this entire political mindset has to be. It is not possible to let go away with that totally, but it is possible to control to a large extent. Because you mentioned about caste, you mentioned about affirmative action. I'm absolutely not against affirmative action. What I'm saying is, over the years, the way affirmative action has been, especially with regard to the caste quotas, have been misused by the political parties. I mean, it has been absolute mess. Be it any political party, be it the central government, in the central government, or any regional political parties. Muslims have become vote banks. Adivasis have become vote banks. They are just seen as a community, as a group who can bring me votes, and not beyond that. Today, if we think that all Muslims are against the current government, it will be absolutely wrong. It is not like that. I mean, similarly, in my state also, there have been instances where political parties have used the help of the Maoists to come to power. And this has not just happened in West Bengal, this has happened in other states also. Where political parties, constitutional political parties, have sought the help of Maoists to come to power, to form government, and they have formed government year after year, where they have given shelter to top Maoist leaders, where they have protected the top Maoist leaders in exchange for some kind of this kind of trade-offs. So the way Indian government is trying to portray it is absolutely there is some kind of a hypocritical stance over here. There is another policy of Government of India called management of public perception, and that comes under the triad of the policies with which the Indian government is handling the Maoist conflict. And this management of public perception is very funny. I mean, so it is. So for example, today you read a newspaper, okay, and how it is done is, one can do a content analysis on management of public perception. So if you read a newspaper, so apparently the policy says that the way the Maoist news will be portrayed is the Maoist will be absolutely painted as a villain, will be painted as and it is a policy, and it is an official policy, official stance of the Indian government to manage the public perception in a very, very systematic way. But fortunately, unfortunately, it is only the English news channel or the English newspapers which can be controlled by the Indian state, probably, if there is a scope. But there are thousands of vernacular channels and vernacular language newspapers which are available in every state, through which the Maoists actually spread their words. And that kind of remains beyond the control of the Indian government. So when it comes to the policies, I think there is some kind of hypocritical stance which is going on. And I might sound very cynical where I'm speaking absolutely against the state, someone who is listening might say, yeah, this is just another academician who is coming and just wiping up against the state. I mean, it should not sound like that, because I have spoken to many police officers who told me, who has lost their colleagues, and who has told me, and that we have been just left here. We are just doing our duty. We do not have any personal enmity with anyone. So it is about the narratives, it is about the stories of all these people. It is not just about you and me. It is the narratives of all these people, and they are not included. Somehow there is a certain community, there is a certain section of the Indian society which is at the top level, who are making the policies, who are making these decisions, and there is an extreme gap between how they are thinking and how the things are actually happening on the ground. So this is the policy part. And the Sanskritization thing that you said, it is absolutely very interesting. One can take it up for further research. It is a very, very old concept also, Sanskritization. It can be remodeled.
Perhaps we can add one or two lines. Sorry, I forgot it in my, as I mentioned it, to explain in 1-2 lines what is Sanskritization in the sense of sociology, because
yes, absolutely. Just in simple language is to somehow there's this entire notion of the inclination to go high up the ladder, and that can be through culture, through books, because certain words in the books have been deleted, whereas certain words have been included, which might sound like upper caste, if I say.
I think a good term to describe it is caste mobility.
Yes,
actually,
absolutely.
there is the idea is, or the process which is described is that a lower caste, by adopting practices, behavior of higher castes, could move up. This is how I understood the
absolutely concept. Because say for example, in marriages, in the Adivasi marriages, there were certain practices which was never there. I'll just give you an example just to make it clear for the Western audiences who have got no clue, dowry system. I'm not sure if you know about the dowry system, where in Indian society, if two persons are getting married, it is generally the girl's parents who have to give cars, money, jewelry, to the boys, to the boys and their family. This is an age-old system which has been going on, and this is called the dowry system. But this is very much an upper caste system. It was never there among the Adivasis. But over the years, we have seen that even in many Adivasi families, or many Adivasi communities, maybe not pan-India, because again the Adivasi structure varies. It is very localized, and it varies from society to society and state to state. So many of them have adopted these practices, or there are certain rituals within the marriage system which they have adopted. So this is the entire process where the inclination to go up the ladder. For example, Brahmins, except in West Bengal, do not eat meat. In West Bengal, we eat meat. Even the Brahmins eat meat. There is no problem. They are non-veg. They are not just vegetarian. But in other parts of India, mostly the Brahmins do not eat meat. So the Adivasis have also started adopting this practice where they are giving up meat. They don't want to eat meat, whereas meat has always been a very staple part of their diet. Obviously keeping in mind affordability section. But this is not just about these institutions, these rituals. There are other areas also where this process has taken place. So it's very interesting. And caste mentality, if you see, what I am trying to argue is more about these everyday practices, these small little practices which might go unnoticed, which might look very harmless, which might be very joking. Oh, you are saying this, people like you always say this kind of statement we say in a very joking way, but it is actually the community we are targeting. Recently, it has happened. There is a prestigious university in Calcutta called Jadavpur University, and there was a professor, a lady professor from the lower caste. I think she was from one of the Adi ST, scheduled tribes communities, and she was harassed by one of her students online. And that student, if I'm not wrong, belonged to an upper caste, comparatively upper caste than her. So this is despite the fact that she's a professor. And this is despite the fact that she is teaching in a prestigious university where getting admission, where getting chance is itself a huge matter. So it is despite all these little entities, the fact that a student had the audacity to challenge the professor and to insult her online shows that how ingrained this mentality is in our psyche. So it is not just about the legal elements where maybe discrimination is banned, where caste discrimination is not allowed. This is much more beyond that. It is much more. Many of the states in United States, they are actually banning caste discrimination because so many Indians are going abroad. They are taking these practices along with them. I mean, even in Germany, I have experienced where we Indians do not have one community, Here also we have divided our communities: Bengalis, Tamils, Telugus, Marathis from Maharashtra. So we do not have an Indian community as such. We have all these small sub-identities with which we love to cling to. And this we take along with us as a migrant. I'm talking, I have experienced this. I have seen this. So we have a Bengali community, we have a Tamil community, we have a Telugu community, all these various communities, Punjabi community here in Germany itself. So whereas Germany is comparatively a recent place where Indians are flocking, it has always been either UK or US. UK much previously, and US after the entire IT boom started in India. US has been a very favorable destination, whereas Germany is comparatively new to that respect. But here also we have made our own very communities, these sub-identities, sub-nationalities we carry along with us. And with that, we carry our caste mentalities also. So it has not just remained confined within the Indian society. It has come with us, we are carrying it, and we kind of consider it as part of our cultural heritage. And this is very unfortunate. We have somehow given it as a cultural norm, and we try to, and we say that we have to carry with us. And this is also partly responsible, if I just try to go a little bit deeper for a few seconds, of not to question our elders. At our houses, we are always said that, parents said this, my mother said this, father said this, you should not question it. This is what we are taught in our everyday houses, in our everyday living, that you cannot question our elders. The fact that the elders can also be wrong, the fact that my teacher can also not allow me to have a critical mindset or rational thinking, never crosses our mind. The very fact that he or she is age-wise elder means he is wiser or she is wiser, and therefore I have to listen to it. And this is also one of the reasons why these age-old customs have found such a great acceptance even among younger generations, and that is very unfortunate. But younger generations also try to rationalize and legitimize it, saying that, my mother used to do it, so I have to do it. I cannot just say no to what my mother used to do. So this is part of our heritage, this is part of our culture, and I have to carry along that with me. So yeah,
we are getting to the end of our time.
absolutely.
I don't know if you want to make some final remarks, some conclusions on this debate that was very, very intense, and a lot of things have been spoken about. Dr. Wolf, do you want to
No,
come
first,
in with?
from my side, I'm actually fine. I mean, I had a 1 point more in my mind. This could be also something like a wrap up, since we both, I mean, more India, but living now in Germany. I came from Germany, did also some field work in India. So, do you see some ideas, lesson how Europe, I say it now, Europe and India could learn from each other a bit when it comes to overcome barriers regarding integration, because, as you know, we have all this now, the huge waves of refugees, and it's getting more and more, or not only refugees, let's say flows of migration of different types. Do you see any commonalities or ideas how to how we could learn from each other? Like a final word, because
Very good, very good. So, Dr. Banerjee, you will have the final word, but just let me tell you something. Dowries are very, very institutionalized in Europe. I mean, of course, in our normal times we don't use them so much any longer, but they were the most important institution governing a lot of things in the Roman times as well, although in different ways. Well, it was not really something so peculiar to India, but it is part of our common civilization. But please, Dr.
Yes,
Banerjee.
thank you. It's very interesting, the comments by both of you. Somehow the tendency by the European countries now towards India is to woo the Indian middle class, the educated class. And if you see, most of these governments and their policies are directed towards wooing this entire probably the engineers and the medical, because many European countries are facing shortages of these kind of staff, and their policies are more or less directed towards that. And somehow, I'm not saying India is losing out of it, because we are benefits of that. I'm staying here. My husband is an engineer who is staying here, so I think we are beneficial to that, and this gives us an immense opportunity where this entire Indian diaspora can actually act as a bridge between these two nations. I mean, we have not yet given up our Indian heritage, while at the same time we are staying here and we are trying to integrate within the society by learning the language, by trying to understand the history, by trying to understand the culture. Similarly, the governments here are trying to bring the people from our part of the world, mostly the educated people, so that the gap in the employment can be filled to a certain extent. So I think Indian diaspora actually can play a lot of role here in bridging the gap, and I'm all for it, because I belong to that diaspora, and I myself have been trying to learn the language, understand the culture, and being from a social science background, I'm interested in the history, to know the language, to know the culture. So I guess Indian diaspora can be used in a much more systematic way, not just fragments here and there, and they build their own communities. No, I think there should be a policy in place by these Western governments, or particularly the European governments, where they can tap the entire potential of the Indian diaspora in a much more systematic way, which can be done stage wise, which can be done in a much more functional manner, where they can be a bridge between their Indian in India and the country that they have made their home.
Thank you very much. I think this was a wonderful way of winding up our debates. Thank you all of those who have been participating, who have been seeing us, watching us from the social media. Thank you, Madalena, in the backstage, for managing all the session. Thank you, Siegfried, and thank you very much, Dr. Banerjee, to accept this invitation. It was a great pleasure to hear you and to discuss these issues. Of course, we got the feeling that it's more the start of a huge discussion than anything else, but that's the way it is. We want to be, a bit of a catalysis of discussion. We do not want to have the final answers. And congratulations for your book, congratulations for your presentation, and the best for your future, either in Germany, in India, or anywhere else in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So much. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.